Bitcoin and energy go together like two peas in a pod.
Everybody knows that, Dad.
Yeah, well, did you know that a 12 gauge shoots very violently?
Yeah, glad you guys are here. Okay.
Absolutely glad to be here.
Yeah, so we've wanted to have you guys on here before. We've had Aaron was on already, but Luxor is one of the
Luxor was like, Aaron didn't do a good job. We've got to send two guys as
we're gonna
backup.
double Aaron's impact by bringing both of you guys on here. So
Nice.
go ahead and like introduce yourself, tell everybody. We'll go background to background, but like
Sure.
just let everybody know who you are and all that.
Great. I'll kick it off. So Colin Kelly, my background is in mechanical engineering. Studied right here in the great state of Texas at the University of Houston. So straight out of school, it was 2016. So oil and gas was way down. So I decided to go to the tech route and ended up doing telecommunications infrastructure. So designing fiber optic networks to data centers, cell towers, residential, commercial, these kinds of things. So I did that for about 8 years. Started off as a design engineer, worked my way through the ranks, project management, kind of did a little bit of it all there. And early 2017, fell down the Bitcoin rabbit hole and started plugging some S9s in my garage. And I go, okay, this is what I want to be doing. How do I get here, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So I really just started immersing myself in the Bitcoin community, rubbing elbows, going to the meetups, the conferences, these kinds of things, and just learning. You know, that's what this space is about, education. And I mean, to really get a good grasp on Bitcoin, you need to study it for a couple of years. And that's what it took for me. So flash forward to about 2020, 2021, I decided, okay, I know I got involved with some small time consulting stuff. Pleb projects, helping buddies plug in miners in their warehouses, garages, sheds, these kind of things. I go, okay, there's some opportunity here for me. How do I get in here? So I spun up my own company called Bluebonnet Data. And through Bluebonnet, you know, Texas, got to represent. So through Bluebonnet, I was able to really build a personal brand for myself. And I got involved with the ASIC markets. And I realized there's some great opportunity here. People don't know how to get these machines, you know, to the States in a safe manner. They need somebody they can trust and that can handle these Chinese vendors and everything. So I saw the opportunity there and I just went full force, you know, solo broker role. I was out there wheeling and dealing, trying to put together deals. And after a while, I got some small stuff done and pitched some big guys and got my name out there. And after a while, Luxor came along and said, hey, man, we like what you're doing. Why don't you come over here and do it with the big boys? So coming up on 5 months now at Luxor. Second day on the job, they said, hey, Colin, I wasn't even done with my onboarding stuff. They said, hey, Colin, we need you to jump on a plane and fly to Tennessee and unplug 1,900 miners for inspection. So I said, okay, let's do it. And ever since then, it's been a grind, man, and just an amazing experience so far. I mean, since the first of the year, I've personally sold over $11 million of ASIC hardware. So
This year?
Wow.
this year,
What?
yeah, that's right.
awesome.
A lot of volume.
Yeah,
That's good to know that
So-
even in this market, like we're still moving.
and that's what I think. You know, you hear about the Bitcoin bear market and everything going down, but when you look at the hardware side and from my desk and that point of view, the guys with the capital that were ready saw all these machines come into the secondary market. You know, all these big guys started filing Chapter 11, liquidating assets, these kinds of things. Well, the experienced miners with the cash roll and the rack space, guess what they were doing? Buying up those machines as fast as they could. We saw enormous amounts of capital rolling in when Bitcoin was 16K, you know, and bouncing around in there. So it's really promising. Looking from the hardware side, absolutely. Things are picking back up. Fresh capital is moving back into the space. So
That's
it's
basically
awesome.
buying production in oil and gas at bottom of the market, right? You're buying ASICs, which are your World War II, but you're essentially buying that production with it. So
Matt, what's your background?
Yeah. So speaking of oil and gas, I have a pretty decent history there. So I graduated from LSU, next door, LSU, right? Son of Louisiana.
I
Proud to
love
be there.
LSU, man. I love LSU. The best football games in college football.
Yeah,
Best place to go.
I don't know there's much competition. People will say there is, but
I love it.
if
I'm
you've
like an
not
honorary LSU guy.
if you've not been to a tailgate at LSU, like don't try to compare.
That's where my
Like,
brother met his girlfriend.
Is it?
Yeah.
At a tailgate?
Man.
Yeah, at a tailgate, at a LSU game.
That's a love story right
And
there.
brought her back to Houston. She's been here ever since.
so
That's
yeah.
awesome.
So yeah, like speaking of like every
Yeah.
Friday, like since I became a professional, I try to wear some form of purple every Friday. So
I like it.
Yeah.
I like it. You went up even further notch in my book.
exactly. That's what I go for. Keep up in the game. So yeah, LSU mechanical engineering as well. I jumped into oil and gas in 2012, working for FMC, now Technip FMC, right? So subsea oil and gas, working on well control, pipeline, manifold riser controls. That's where I got some early exposure to like networking and technology and stuff like that from the professional side. And worked there for 4 years, got to travel the world. So that was really cool. I got to go to Equatorial Guinea, South Africa, Ghana, Scotland, Newfoundland, Halifax, and Nova Scotia. So like I got to see stuff that like
Wow.
at 25 years old, like
Yeah.
just ridiculously fortunate, blessed to have had that opportunity. So
Super cool. Yeah.
that was a really cool experience. And then the downturn of 2016 came along pretty heavily, and I found myself not on a project. And when you're not billable in that space, there's not a lot of rope to give. So found myself looking for a new gig, and I wandered through another opportunity for a little while working at a gasket manufacturer here in Houston, and learned a little bit about like continuous improvement and lean manufacturing, stuff like that. And then I found my way to Flex Steel Pipeline. They actually recently just got acquired, but they're a really big pipeline company upstream. But the novelty there is they have polyethylene HDPE pipe. It's wrapped in steel, and then it's wrapped in polyethylene again. So you can do really long runs, like thousands of feet of 4-inch up to 8-inch, 2, 3, 4, 6, and 8 is what they offered. But you can go up to 3,000 psi. So upstream, it's a very suitable product. It's plastic, so it doesn't have the corrosion issues that steel pipeline has, and you don't have to weld it every 40 feet, 20 feet, or whatever. So you can bring a well online, provided all the other infrastructure is there. You can bring a well online a heck of a lot quicker using this rather than traditional construction methods. So that takes me all the way through up to Luxor, and so now I go back a little bit to find my way into Bitcoin. So early 21, when all the stimulus checks were going out, I started kind of like looking at stuff, and that kind of commingled with a press release that Microsoft did. They had like these subsea data centers that they were just releasing results on.
I remember that they were testing.
Yeah, exactly.
Subsea cooling.
Somehow it came
yeah.
across a news feed or something like that. I click on the link and start reading about it. And like at FMC, it's all subsea, right? So like they've got control modules that have hydroelectric controls and everything. So like they're controlling well bores this big at 10,000 feet subsea with a click of a button, right? So like
so crazy.
Yeah.
they're sending electrons down subsea. They're doing all this stuff. So like that kind of piqued my interest. I'm like, is that something I could get into? Because what they were saying is like basically when you're at depth subsea, the ambient temperature is like 40 degrees Fahrenheit, just all the time.
Always.
Yeah. So like cooling is not a problem. And then to send electronics down there, you have to have them in like an oxygen-free environment. So like nitrogen, and some of them actually just submerge everything in a dielectric. That also increases longevity. So you get, they were talking, I think like 40% extension on longevity of their data centers down there. It's like, that's really fascinating. I started looking at that and I was like, what could you do with that? I was like, could you do like defense stuff? You want like a server that no one knows about? Let's go put it under the freaking ocean. Like,
Yeah.
so I looked at that and like, okay, well that's defense, but how else could you monetize this? Like if your only market is defense servers, okay, that's interesting.
Limits you a little bit.
Yeah, so I started looking at, well, could you like mine Bitcoin down there? Because I'd only scratched the surface, right? Like I heard about it when I was in college, but like I was a mechanical engineer. Like I was nerding out about other stuff. I didn't really care about finance or anything like that. Like I'd heard about it, like that's interesting. And then like 6 years later, I told the wife, like, hey, you should like put $1,000 into Bitcoin. This was like 2015. And she's like, okay. And then she forgot, or she was risk averse and didn't really want to do it. So that sent me down the rabbit hole as far as like investigating Bitcoin, understanding mining and some of the concepts there. I'm like, what is SHA-256? Oh, it's an algorithm that encrypts. And yeah. So I started looking into that, and then just kept educating myself, learning. And then shortly thereafter, I started going to the Houston meetup. So like big shout out to Parker and Dave for that event. That is an awesome, fantastic group of people that just, it always puts out.
It's brought the Bitcoin community together in Houston. And
Without a doubt. Without a doubt. And honestly, I've been to a few of them around, I won't say around the country. I've been out to Tennessee and up Oklahoma, and I've seen, I haven't been to the Midland one yet. I'm going in April, but the Houston one is as good as anything out there, honestly. Maybe even better than all of them.
Well, it's because we have all the energy guys too.
Right.
And we have fajitas by Landry's. Come on.
Fajitas
are
you
bomb.
can't beat that.
They
So,
really are solid. And
that's where we met.
Yeah, absolutely. Like you, Mario, Griffin, Giddy, like all the guys who've been on the podcast and stuff, but like it's just an awesome community, and like everyone's super friendly, welcoming. So like I started doing that, and like I remember my first meetup was the October. I know it was October because it was the World Series, and they had to move the event so that people would actually show up. And I showed up the night before, actually, if I remember correctly. So. Just kept educating myself, went down the altcoin, I'll be polite here, the altcoin route for a little bit.
Everybody does.
Yeah.
We need to be honest about it. You know what I mean? Everybody goes down that path at some point. I did too.
Yeah. It's like that time in college, you just want to experiment a little bit.
Well, when you don't know
everything out,
when you don't know what you don't know, you got to get burnt eventually. So like I did well. Like I paid attention to some like market schematics from like the early 1900s that were like, hey, this is accumulation, this is distribution. If you follow these things and you see these patterns, like it's going down from here, it's going up from there. So like I actually did pretty well in November of 21, catching the top there. I wasn't confident enough to like just go all in and like short, but like I did pretty well for 21. And then I was like, I really want to get into this space because the mechanical engineer in me is like always looking at like mechanical systems, power generation and stuff like that. And if you tell me there's a way that like you could come up with a novel power generation concept and then have like automatic investment with it, with Bitcoin mining, like that's just really fascinating because like most of any kind of business or development or innovation, like it's starved for investment early on. So now you've got this cash flow right there. All you have to do is plug it in. If your device works and it generates power, you've got this. So like I've had a few ideas, novel ideas on power generation that I'd love to try someday. I think we even talked about some of that stuff.
Some of that.
So
that's what's funny too about this space to me is that a lot of the people that have knocks on Bitcoin or mining do not come from a background like you or you, and it's from people that really just don't have any concept of what goes into some of the mechanical engineering side of things and like power generation, how those things play together and what's needed to actually get energy to, commercialize it and get it to a market. They don't come from a background that like, and I'm sure there are some out there, but they don't have backgrounds that I would value their opinions on. You know what I mean? It's more of a ideologue type of position that they have rather than a position that's based on experience, knowledge, education, or anything like that. And it's funny because most of the people that are in it do come from those kind of backgrounds. And to me, that's like, well, that should be a really big indication that we should probably listen to the people that are educated, have experience in it, and come from these type of backgrounds to determine whether or not this is a valuable resource or industry for like power generation, grid infrastructure stability, things like that. So it's just funny because as you guys were talking, there's so many people in this space that are from like Texas or the South and then also out west, like Silicon Valley tech types.
Yep.
It seems like there's not a ton of guys, and I'm sure there's a lot of Bitcoin people everywhere, but like the people, and granted we are in Texas, so you're going to automatically run into more people from the South. But it feels like even when I go other places, most of the people that are working in the mining space, Silicon Valley folks or kind of oil and gas guys. And it's weird that this is an industry where you're bringing those two together because they're so far apart on so many different areas. But this is one where it's like you're bringing that technology and the energy kind of backgrounds together and looking for ways to kind of change the whole system that we got. And it's cool. It's cool.
One of the biggest realizations when I started my engineering career is exactly that. People don't know how this stuff works. And I'm talking just basic fiber optic infrastructure. How does the internet work? Nobody knows.
Nobody knows that. They don't know how Visa works. They don't know how any of this stuff works. But then this is the one thing they're always asking questions about. Well, I don't even understand Bitcoin or mining or how it works. You don't understand how any of this stuff works, but you just blindly follow it.
You understand how a microwave works? You understand how a telephone works?
I just figured that out.
Wi-Fi?
Yeah.
5G?
I don't know how any of that works.
It's all black magic. Nobody really understands.
Yeah. When I tell people, when I got into fiber and started really digging into the infrastructure of it, when I figured out that our internet is connected through a series of subsea cables that connect continents, we're talking massive fiber cables rolled through the bottom of the ocean, connecting continents together.
Colin, that's the first time I've ever heard that in my life. I didn't know that at all.
Yeah. See, exactly. And
no
that's
idea.
the internet. That's what the network is. People think, it's all up in the air. No, the actual internet network is hardwired. And it's through cables.
How crazy that is.
Yeah.
Like, there's
It's
just
insane.
We're walking
thousands and thousands of miles of just cables on the ocean floor
I had no idea.
connecting.
And the fact that it's fiber versus copper, like there's another layer of nuance. Not only is it thousands of miles, they're literally just blinking a light really fast.
Yeah.
fiber optics.
That's what fiber is. Yeah.
At its core is a very tiny, small piece of glass
That's it.
that transmits data.
They just blink a light.
We're
So
converting
crazy.
data into a light, flash it through a light, it ends up at the other end of the cable.
Millions of times.
That's
per
how
second.
it goes so
It's still
fast.
hard for me to wrap my head around like how a record player works. And then you go to
I know.
then you go to a cassette and you're like, what? And then you go to a CD and you're like, this still doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
And then now it's just like all MP3s. It's like, what?
Well, and this is a hilarious parallel as well. Like, how many people understand what it takes to get oil and gas out of the ground to a refinery into their car, such that they can even drive, right? Like, that intersection is of Bitcoin and energy, and then like knowledge and understanding is just.
But
it's
yet
funny.
the whole FUD is based on like, a lot of it anyway is used because we don't have this understanding of things. But it's like, man, we don't have an understanding of hardly anything.
No.
I was listening to some stupid Instagram Reels video or whatever, and I saw it the other day, and this is, I mean, maybe a tinfoil hat type of deal, but which we still need to get. Some of
That's
those.
a whole
We need
like,
to
the whole
have, like,
segment. Yeah, I know.
Put 'em on.
put them on. But he was talking about kind of the change, like what we don't understand today, and how fragile we actually are. And that if there was some type of climate disaster, like an asteroid coming and just wiping things out, we all have flown on planes. We all know, that has happened. We couldn't build a plane though. And so we would lose so much technology if something like this happened.
Yeah.
Right? Could we go restart the internet and get it going again? I think this would be a very complex thing that would take a long time if we could ever do it again.
Yep.
And he was talking about by the 5th generation, it would all be myths.
Yep.
You know what I mean? It would all be a myth. And we would tell people, our kids, about it, and then they tell their kids about it. But by that 5th generation, our crazy freaking grandpa talking about, they were flying around in these planes and
made of metal,
right? Made of metal.
In the
that
air?
doesn't make any sense. But that is kind of how I think of all this stuff. It's it's a remarkable where we're at, but man, we don't understand anything. But yet that fact is what's used to kind of hold up what Bitcoin is and Bitcoin mining and the
That's a
value
really
of it.
good point.
Yeah.
Maybe we need to inscribe all this wisdom
I know where he's going.
onto the blockchain through ordinals.
Oh.
Hot topic.
So that way it will be
cool.
passed down for generations for eternity.
That's actually funny that you brought that up.
We still haven't talked about ordinals on the show.
Right.
Oh
right,
man,
yeah,
we'll get
yeah.
into it.
All right, good. Because I've wondered. Oh, did I need to move that? My bad. I've wondered about. I've read a little bit about it. I haven't spent a ton of time, and I'm not the biggest techie guy about it. I'm definitely on the energy side of the mining space.
We're just a bunch of oil and gas guys.
Right, we're oil and gas guys. So, but I do want to. I'd like to have a good explanation of of that and how that kind of fits into stuff, and it would help people too understand it. So
Absolutely. Well, I'll hand it over
Yeah.
to Matt here.
I knew that was coming.
He's the ordinal, up to speed on the ordinals here.
Okay, so I am by far not an expert on like Bitcoin core programming. I've listened to enough people who I think are, so I'll do my best here. So provide that disclaimer.
This is an impersonation of Vest. Here we go.
So in a Bitcoin block, you've got two types of data. You've got transaction data and you've got what's called witness data. The transaction data is effectively address A sends X Bitcoin to address B, right? So like that's essential to have that data stored forever because that's how you know who has what and whether or not you're getting a double spend, someone's trying to defraud you, right? On the other side, you've got what's called witness data. So there was a change to Bitcoin, I believe in 2017 or 2018 called SegWit, where they segregated the witness data from the transaction data. They used to be stored together. And it used to be, you could only use 1 megabyte's worth of data for a block. And that's one of the arguments that like Ethereum guys talk about. So like, I know this, the audience for the podcast here is like pretty diverse here. So I'll talk about that a little bit, but basically you have small blocks on Bitcoin for a very specific reason. And that's because it's intended to be decentralized money. If you have a whole bunch of data required to run a node, meaning you have to download all these transactions and all of this crap, it means that your nodes are going to be concentrated into people who can only afford a data center, as opposed to like I'm running Bitcoin at my house on a Raspberry Pi with a 2 terabyte hard drive.
Yeah.
Anyone could go run a Bitcoin node.
Right.
That's like your branch at the bank. So we'll dial this back to the transaction and the witness data, right? Back in 2021, there was another update to Bitcoin called Taproot, where they added some scripting capabilities. And what that did was it said, let me go back to SegWit. So SegWit segregate the witness data from the transactions, and it also made it to where you could put more stuff in the witness data. You can add code to the witness data that actually enables the transaction. So like if you want some kind of multi-sig, like if you want multiple signatures to unlock Bitcoin, that was enabled by SegWit. So it's really important to some of the development that makes Bitcoin usable money for payments and stuff like that. So Taproot comes up with a discount, is what it's called. Basically, you've got 3 megabytes. Well, no, it's not 3. It could be up to like 3.9. But you've got the transaction data that says address to address how much. You've got the witness data. You can have a 4 megabyte block, so you can't put more than 4 megabytes in the block. You can only have 1 megabyte of transaction data. Well, now the block can be 4 megabytes. So if you have all this data in the witness, you've got a whole bunch of extra space. What that has allowed people to do is to add a whole bunch of data that has nothing to do with money, that has nothing to do with transactions.
Yep.
So they can put what are they putting in there? That's where the ordinals
Yes.
are, right? That's
Yes.
what the ordinal is.
And the ordinal part of it is what makes it transmittable and unique. The inscription is actually just putting the data in there. Like, so there's this other part of it that requires that you track every Satoshi, and there's 100 million Satoshis in one Bitcoin. So they track every single one, and that's how you transmit it. But ultimately, it's like doing art on a dollar, and you can pass it off, right? Like that's what it's a physical thing that you can pass along. That's why it's an ordinal, because that's counting the Satoshis. The inscription is where you actually do the art. So they're putting JPEGs, audio files. They're putting a video game. Did you play Doom?
I mean, I played it some back in the day. Obviously.
Yeah, who didn't, right?
I mean, I'm old, so yeah, definitely.
So anything that's represented on a computer can be stored as data in some way. So they can encrypt the data, and they shove it into the block. Now,
so what are they using it for mostly now? Like, what are most people putting in there? Just obscure nothings, or anything of value from an information standpoint? Like,
so there's some interesting use cases, but most of it is the NFT crowd. Like, they're Ethereum people who have come over and they're running a full Bitcoin node now because they can. They're like, oh, this is novel. Bitcoin needed this. They needed. Like, I heard someone literally say Bitcoin needed ordinals. I'm like, Like no joke. So like I was like, I don't know about that. But
Right.
either way, there's people flocking to Bitcoin to do this because of the NFT craze.
Right. I think that's
So
probably
they're
semantics.
creating NFTs as ordinals.
Well, they're sending them, right? They're
We're
basically
sending
sending them.
So it's a non-fungible token, meaning there's this one, it can't be used interchangeably. Once you've put this data with this Satoshi, that Satoshi now has that inscription associated with it, right? So like, again, think of it as like if someone draws the Mona Lisa on a dollar and hands it, that dollar is no longer ever going to look like another dollar. So it's non-fungible. So it can fetch a different price. So yeah, they're putting JPEGs, they're putting all kinds of weird files on the blockchain in the block.
Basically, though, because you can't ever like it's identifiable then, right?
Yes.
It's a one of a kind at that point. So that's the NFT aspect of it. But I guess I'm trying to think. The Ethereum crowd say that they're using it now, and they're like, "Oh, it needed this." It's probably good for adoption standpoint from Bitcoin because it like removes a lot of the argument about like, well, Ethereum, you can do this and you do that. Yeah. I'm like, what's the use case? Like, well, you can use all this. You can use it for all the stupid shit you want to.
So I've heard that it makes. Okay, so help me fill in this gap here. So now I have a little bit better understanding. And I still kind of feel retarded on the subject, but
no, I do too. Don't worry.
It's easy.
Well, from what I've heard, it also
is not easy, man.
It's easy to feel that way on this subject because it's like,
I've heard that
feel more.
it can potentially make mining more profitable. Help me fill in the gaps here.
Yeah. So
miners love it.
Great question too.
Yeah.
I don't understand that.
So here we go.
okay,
right.
so
Here's a rabbit hole.
for every
Yeah.
anytime you want to post a transaction in Bitcoin, you associate a fee with it, right?
Mhm.
Like most wallets take care of it for you. They monitor the current. It's called the mempool. Are you familiar with mempool?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mempool is a place on servers is distributed that if you want to post a transaction to the Bitcoin blockchain, you put your authorized transaction in the mempool. So it's just a list of transactions that are waiting to be confirmed in the blockchain.
Gotcha.
You associate a fee with it. Most wallets monitor the mempool to see what's the current market fee rate.
Like the gas rate. Right?
Yeah.
Exactly. So what this does is when you have more transactions, because you've got people who want to put an inscription in it, like you actually have to post it. You increase a huge influx of transactions into the mempool. Well, if you put the lowest Satoshi value fee, you're not going to get touched. You might not get touched for a day. I think I heard very recently the mempool cleared out. Like it had gone that there was like multiple days worth of blocks of transactions in the
Backed up, mempool. Waiting.
Right.
Yeah.
I did see that. So
Yeah.
that makes sense. Why
So when there's a much lower transactions
right.
mempools, there's no queue anymore.
Yeah.
So miners are getting paid off transaction fees as
Yes.
Getting paid off gas.
well. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. It's part of the incentive to Bitcoin because it's 210,000 blocks, which generally equates to about 4 years. Every 4 years, there's two parts of the block reward. There's the fees that people pay to use the network, and then there's the subsidy, the block or the block
coins-
reward. Yeah, the
block
Coinbase.
reward.
That's
the
the
Bitcoin
technical.
for solving
Yeah.
a block.
Which is how new Bitcoin is being issued through the network,
Yep.
right? It's how Bitcoin's being distributed is through the block rewards that the miners are buying. So any of that Bitcoin that comes from those block rewards is gifted straight from the Bitcoin network. Fresh, virgin coin is what they call it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Mm.
that gets cut in half. Yeah. Ooh.
Likes that one.
So that block reward is going to get cut in half in 2024-ish. So ultimately, the idea is that the fees are going to be the sustenance for miners. It's going to be the
Right.
financial incentive for miners in 5, 10, 20 years because the block reward. So like right now, it's 6.25 Bitcoin every block. In 24, it's 3.125. After that, I don't feel like doing the math further.
1.75.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's where everybody's kind of like, well, you need price appreciation. You do, but you also need, well, eventually that's the only thing you'll have.
Mhm.
Now we'll all be dead and
2140,
gone, but yeah, by 2140, virtually you have no block rewards anymore. It's
Yep.
all transaction fees. So it's an adoption deal,
Yep.
basically, is that
Yep.
you're going to have more transactions on the blockchain, on the Bitcoin blockchain with ordinals and things like
Yep.
that. So you're going to drive up the gas rate, which will increase the profitability for miners. That's the best explanation Heard.
He's the man.
Good job.
That's
Brad.
why we got him here.
Yes.
I knew there was a reason.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I think
Luxor
there is.
needs multi-year contracts for you guys.
I'll take
That's
it.
what I need.
Well,
We'll run it up to
can
the
you
boss
do the
man.
terms for me, Justin?
Yes. Yes. We're good. Martin Legal. We can do everything. So, yes, absolutely. That is great though. That's literally, now I feel like I understand way more about that. Because I spent a little bit of time reading about it, and I'm like, and I had seen people are like using it for NFT stuff. I'm like, I don't get it, but that makes a lot more sense.
And that's
That
what I
makes a lot more
love
sense.
about this space is the continued creativity
Right.
and ingenuity that happens. We're dealing with, Bitcoin. It has a software aspect to it. People need to maintain the software, so
Yeah.
you get cool things that come out of it like
Yeah,
this.
because a lot of the knock on Bitcoin too, from like the developer side, sometimes that I hear anyway, is like, oh, it's not a great technology. There's so much better technology out there than there's better
It's
blockchains.
slow,
And all. Yeah, it's
yeah.
slow. But I think what like the average person doesn't understand is that there's developers around the world that work on the Bitcoin kind of protocol or blockchain or however you want to describe it daily. And they're coming up with new, like Lightning and all the different ways that
Mhm.
they continue to build on it. And that's the beauty of it, is that it is decentralized. And that's not only good for Bitcoin from a monetary value standpoint, because you don't have anybody going in and being able to control, but it also allows the freedom for some of the smartest people and developers around the world to do what they want on here and come up with protocols and new things that are going to benefit it. And if it's good, then everybody's going to start using it that way. And so I think it's like an ingenuity type of, haven. It's incredible
it is.
for people to want to come
And we're
in.
still so early, man.
Oh man, so freaking early. Going back to the internet, I didn't know this till very long ago. I think the first email, do you know when the first email was sent?
Almost the entire idea of the internet was almost completely abandoned because people did not like the idea. Back then they were called personal computers, meaning for me, you put your personal data on there. When people started saying, hey, plug your computer into the network and with all these other computers, they said, no way. What do you mean? This is my personal computer. So yeah, it was almost completely
But
abandoned.
when was it?
It was like 68, 1968.
I figured it was 70s, but
Right.
I believe it.
And I think the mouse was even around like in the early 60s. And it took a long time for people to get accustomed to this new way of communicating. And like literally when I was in high school, I'm old. We were not really using computers a whole lot. Like we had the internet, but like we didn't do.
It was still horse and buggy back
I know,
then.
man. Honestly, our school did have a day where you ride a horse to school.
That is
what?
sweet.
People would ride a horse to school or drive a tractor to school.
Missouri, man.
That's cool.
Yeah, it was old school, man.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, it was pretty bad. I drove a Geo tracker though at the time.
No shit.
I did.
A buddy of mine
Geo
had one of those.
tracker. Yeah, man, it was bad. Dude.
Yeah.
We'd drive around and take the top off, and like there was this restaurant called Gringos. It was like a cheap version of Taco Bell,
Oh yeah.
which is that's like an oxymoron.
Yeah.
almost, you know?
It's already cheap.
Yeah,
It's
so-
terrifying, actually.
But, I know, they had 25-cent burritos. We'd go get 4 burritos for $1. And we'd use them almost like water balloons. People be in the back. Luckily, I grew up in a really small town where all the cops knew who my dad was. And if I got in trouble, they'd just tell my dad instead of like give me some type of criminal record. So, but we used to people to wait in the back. And as soon as the light would turn green, I'd take off and they start throwing burritos at people in the cars next to us. Bad idea. I don't recommend it.
Don't.
Too bad you
do
didn't
that,
pull up in a
kids.
geo tracker for the cow pin thing with Bloomberg.
I know.
Skinny jeans and a geo tracker.
That
Dude,
would've
you'd
been
never
just-
live that
I
down.
never would have lived that down. Never would have lived that down.
That'd have been excellent, though.
It would have been. It would have been. I'll settle for the skinny jeans, even though they weren't. But
Yeah.
sorry,
They weren't exactly like Janko jeans.
They weren't. They weren't Jinko jeans, but they were not skinny jeans, Matt. Okay,
Yeah.
they were straight leg. They're just
You just tapered,
tapered a little bit.
Yeah.
When you're an athletic specimen like Justin.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, your calves do what they do, man.
Yeah.
Man, I got bird legs. So I skip leg day all the time. So. My bad. All right,
All
we'll
good.
go back to it. But yeah. So you mentioned earlier about the sales, and they're still $11 million this year. Is most of that from the auction site? And I would like you guys talk about kind of what the
Sure.
platforms that Luxor offers. But Is most of that new sales or is that used machines? Because there are a shit ton of machines coming to market right now.
You're right. Actually, most of that revenue generated was through new machine sales.
Really?
Yeah. So Luxor really has done a great job as positioning themselves as somebody that interacts in the secondary market. All the institutional players see that and recognize that. So they've started coming to us and say, hey, guys, I've got 1,600 machines. I need to liquidate next week. Luxor, do your thing. So that's exactly what we do. We step into that process. We evaluate the machines, in this case, maybe used machines. We go through a due diligence process where we're checking out hash reports, efficiency, power consumption, all the things you need to know that the ASIC is running operational.
You guys are Kelly Blue Booking this thing, huh?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's it, man.
Y'all kids don't know about Kelly Blue Book. That was the Bible back in the day when you
Yeah,
bought
well,
cars.
Oh yeah.
And so once we have that information, we feel comfortable with the machines, we'll take it to our buyers, our clients. And Luxor has a vast universe of buyers, and that's what sets us apart. So we're able to take these machines onto the secondary market in a very professional manner and get them sold. This kind of segues into exactly what the new platform, our RFQ platform, is doing. It stands for Request for Quote. And basically, it's an online marketplace that we've opened up to any public buyers that has our verified vendors on the other side of it. So Justin, Mr. Miner, I need 10 S19J Pros, 100 terahash. You can go onto the RFQ, post your willing to buy, your want to buy there. I need 10 J Pros, 100 terahash. And then all of our vendors will come in there and compete for that business. They'll place, here's my offer. I can fill your order. This is where they're shipping from. Here's the condition and the warranty. And right there, you're able to interact directly with the vendor. And
what kind of response time is there on? Is this like live, like chat, or is this?
It's live, man.
Is it? So
I
like,
mean, we've seen it as soon as somebody posts a want to buy on there. We've seen vendors come in. Sometimes it does take a little bit of time.
Is this more like is it like a forum? Does it look like a marketplace?
It's
What
a
is this?
marketplace online. Yeah, rfq.luxor.tech. And it's an online marketplace, exactly that. And so it benefits both the buyer is making sure that they're getting a competitive price, because you'll see multiple vendors competing for that business. So it provides that mechanism of price discovery. That's what you want in this business. Everybody wants the good deal on.
So is it going to like an auction, or is it silent? Like how are they? You got 3 people who are interested in 1,500 miners. How does this process go?
Sure. So like I said, you can post 2 different kinds of options on the RFQ. So you can post a want to buy or a want to sell. So if you're wanting to buy, you post what machines you want. And then it has an expiration date, and the buyer actually gets to pick that 3, 5, or 7 days. I want my post up there for 3 days. I'm trying to close it quick,
Mm-hmm.
So that tells the vendors that, hey, you need to get in here and start responding. So that opening date and expiration date is all displayed there on the marketplace. And so those vendors will step in, and they know they have a certain amount of time to get their offers in. Same thing on the willing to sell side. So when I have miners new in the box that I have here in the US. I want to sell them. I'll post it up there and I'll leave it up for 7 days. This gives the opportunity for buyers to come in and say, wow, this looks like a good batch. Here's my offer.
And are the offers public so everybody see them?
Yes.
Okay.
So you're anonymous on the platform. Like, it's not going to tell you XYZ vendor is filling your order, right? Or the buyer or anything. So that does, it drives the competitiveness there.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Do they get alert, the potential vendors, they get like an alert?
Oh, yeah. So everybody,
live basis.
Everybody that we've onboarded. So we have an RFQ email system that will alert you, hey, a new buyer has posted a want to buy.
Yeah.
Let's go check it out. We also have a really cool Telegram chat that as soon as anything's posted or closed, it'll pop up on the Telegram alert.
Do they have to pay for this service? The vendors, or what's the relationship work? Like how
How do you guys make money?
yeah,
What's the business model?
how do you guys monetize it?
That's
Yeah.
right. Exactly. So what we wanted to do is something a little bit different here. We wanted to do a transparent kind of fee structure. And that's what we've done, different than traditional brokering deals where it's like the markups vary from deal to deal. Here we have a threshold and we have a tier fee structure. So once you're the fee is attached to the liquidity taker. So if I'm the buyer and I'm getting the good deal, you're going to be purchasing and taking the liquidity there. So the buyer is responsible for the fee. Depending on the dollar size, it can range anywhere from $1%, 1% up to a 7.5% fee. And 7.5% is the highest we go. And that's typically for more small scale stuff.
Yeah.
Any of these bulk deals, you're going to get to those dollar thresholds where it really bumps your fee down because we need to remain competitive, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we're here to get deals done and sell miners. That's what we do. So, that's how it works.
See, this is what's cool too. This is another sign of how early I think we are in the whole space. Lisa talked about it on the last one where she mentioned like this is like man discovering fire type of moment with Bitcoin. You see it in the industry too, with all the different things that constantly are popping up and the new, like this type of service. And there's so many other areas where there needs to be growth and an industry developed to serve a certain need that the mining industry has. And we're getting to see that happen. And because we're all in it, but so many people out there don't even realize what's going on and they're missing out on being able to get into an industry early on where not only is it going to benefit you down the road through just being involved in Bitcoin at this early stage and where it's still real cheap, and down the road it's going to be obviously tremendously higher in all of our opinions. But you're getting to see like entrepreneur type moves from so many different people that are like, they're going to be the people in the future and the companies in the future that have established themselves as like leaders and frankly just make a ton of money because they got into the space at the right time and saw different ways to start capitalizing on like areas that the industry is missing out on. Luxor, honestly, I'm not trying to kiss anybody's butt, but Luxor has done probably as good a job as anybody I've seen in the space, coming up with new ways to serve the space and new ways to address needs. So I'm a big fan of everything you guys have done over there. And, I've known Ethan now for a while. He was one of the first people I got to know a little bit in the space when I got going. So, I got nothing but good things to say about
You guys
Luxor.
aren't owned by anybody, right?
Not no. We have investors.
They
and
looked
stuff.
real,
Yeah.
They looked
But,
really
like,
nervous
there's no-
when you asked that
well-
right there. I just see them look at each other.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
what?
Wait
Where's
a
There's
this?
no
second.
like FTX behind the scene that like
No,
owns you guys. Is
hell
what I'm
no,
saying.
no,
Okay.
no.
I thought SBF drove you over here.
I saw him. I saw him in the car.
Yeah.
He found a way to get his ankle bracelet off.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really great. And I've been extremely inspired since I started at Luxor working with these guys. Product after product, they're pushing the stuff out. They know where to service this industry. And that's what you see with the RFQ platform. Excuse me. People have been buying and selling ASICs over Telegram since Bitcoin mining started.
Since the beginning of time.
Yeah.
So,
I remember-
people are getting scammed
Yeah.
and robbed, and it's terrible.
It's
so
sketchy.
so we with the RFQ, that's what this provides. Both parties are facing Luxor, and Luxor is your central counterparty. You get the brand name, you get us, the real people. We make sure that your deal's going to go smoothly. We make sure your miners are going to show up when they're going to show up.
It's like a safety
Yep.
type of deal
And that's
too,
what you need in this industry. I mean, because
reputableness. Honestly,
Exactly.
big time from talking with a lot of oil and gas companies over the last 3 years about mining and trying to get them into it. That is the biggest area, especially when you start talking about larger scale groups that are talking about some real dollars, and they've got to take it to their investment committee and they've got to go to their board and show them what they're wanting to do. And it's like, yeah, I'm buying it from this group in China or, some random little group that there's
Yeah.
no counter, and their contracts are terrible, and they look horrible, and
Yep.
it's like, oh man, I gotta wire you all half the money up front, and
Or send it in Bitcoin.
hope that
or
this is
USD,
it's really sketchy sounding
It is.
to a group that is a traditional type of institution, and they don't want to do it. So like having groups like you guys, and I know Foundry's your competitor, but like you guys, Foundry, big guys that you can look at and say, okay, that provides a level of security for me to make my investment. They have some counterparty risk mitigation,
Yep.
and that just gives them a level of comfort that they don't normally have. So that's a big deal. It's a really big deal.
SOC 2 compliant on,
Right.
on the pool side. Not
Yeah.
not everything is under that umbrella, but definitely
Mhm.
SOC 2 compliant.
So you have the pool.
Yep.
You've got this RFQ platform on the ASIC side. What other parts of the business is there for Luxor?
I'm going to throw the derivatives team a bone here because that's one of the more novel
Oh,
ones
yeah.
that's new. Derivatives, right? So like if you want to hash power, you can get a contract. If you want to hash Bitcoin, you can get a contract. Up until October, it was really hard to try and am I saying
Hedge.
hash?
You
I'm
did.
trying to say hedge.
Hedge.
I got hash on the brain.
It's okay.
Well,
I was like,
hash
am I
rate.
retarded? Do I know what he's talking about or not?
What's
If
he
you want
talking
to
about?
well, you
What's he
can
talking
hash
about?
all those
Yeah.
words.
I mean,
If you want to hedge those things, you can get a contract, right?
yeah.
Yep.
But one of the things that you couldn't hedge was the compute power or the hash rate. So what we introduced in October was hash rate derivatives. It's a non-deliverable forward contract, meaning that you don't actually have to deliver hash rate to participate in this exchange. But if, let's say you're a hosting provider or you're bringing a facility online and you've got debts to pay at a certain point, like your terms start at this time, you can engage in a contract for up 1, 2, or 3 months. And you say, based on this hash price, meaning the amount of dollars that you would receive for a certain amount of hash rate, right, which is the compute power that the miners generate. For that, you get a certain amount of fixed income. So you get it for that term, and we do an auction every month. We just wrapped up, I believe. Yeah, we
Yeah.
just wrapped up because
So it's just like a once a month auction
yep.
currently.
And so we can work with you on terms. So there's all kinds of interesting elements there. We just released our Bitcoin denominated derivatives. So like if you've got obligations to pay in Bitcoin, you could actually hedge your hash rate in Bitcoin and get paid out in Bitcoin rather than US dollars.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's CFTC regulated. So it is all above board. It's all as institutional as it gets. Now, Ben Harper and Matt Williams are our derivatives guys. So I'll leave it to them to answer the really tough questions because I'm a mechanical engineer. I don't do the finance stuff that much. But that's one of our new products that's really interesting that I've kind of been looking at from a distance. But yeah, the other one that I'm involved with is firmware. That's a market that's been developing for the past 3 years, 4 years. I mean, like obviously there's firmware on every miner out there, every machine. And just to explain it, like every miner, every ASIC is actually just like a little Linux computer with very specific peripherals. I don't know if when did you take your last computer class in elementary school or whatever?
Oh my gosh, not elementary school. That's like high
That's
school.
fair. Okay.
Jeez.
Well, peripheral is just
Yeah.
like your printer, and technically your monitor is a peripheral in a computer, right?
Keyboard, mouse.
Well, the boards that do the hashing are just peripherals to this little Linux computer. So it's a little Linux computer that can run a Linux operating system. Well, we develop an aftermarket firmware now that gives you more control and ultimately better performance out of your machines, because what I've learned very quickly, and that's why I joined the company around the same time that Colin did, is it's like you look at an ASIC, oh, that's a 100 terahash machine. It's like, that's a 100 terahash machine if it's, let's say, 60 degrees outside and there's no sand blowing through your filters in your intake. And there's a lot of things that factor into that, right? What the performance of a miner really depends on very heavily is temperature. Like if you're not regulating temperature properly, your machines are not running optimally. So like I was kicking around different ideas with my dad, like how do I come up with the analogy? But it's basically like if you imagine you have a sports car with like a terrible computer system in it, like it's not going to drive very well.
It's not tuned well.
Right.
Yeah.
So what our firmware allows you to do is to tune it to your use case. Because you could be in a bear market, you're struggling with OpEx, you need to contract, you need to control cost.
Yep.
Well, now you can underclock. So like you're not chewing up as much power, your OpEx is down. You might be able to squeeze through the bear market.
Mm-hmm.
You guys know as well as anyone in the oil space, cost control is everything when you're in a downturn. Now imagine in 2024, I've got an awesome callback here. 2024, we talked about the halving, right? That means that your revenue literally just gets cut in half one day.
Overnight.
That's it.
That's bad.
If your cost control isn't on point, you're going to get crushed. It's just going to you have no choice.
Who's making decline curves for Bitcoin mining?
It is tough. But you do have to, you try to build it into your model. It's a tough way to do it.
Is anybody doing that on essentially the forecasting side?
Oh yeah. No, they do it.
Okay.
And what we did on ours was, we built in a difficulty increase, and I think we had a 1.25, 1.5% every adjustment period. So every 2 weeks. And then at the halving, you literally just cut it in half, and it sucks. It's ugly. It's ugly.
All the oil and gas guys out there know what we're talking about. But if you're running an oil and gas company, you have a reservoir. It's a depleting asset. Over time, particularly with horizontal wells, the drop off from your initial production to where you're going to end 1 year, 2 year, 3 years out is massive. For old school vertical wells, it's much less of a drop off. But you have to be able to predict your production, aka your revenue. And it's constantly just kind of going down. And then you have to extrapolate that out across all of your assets. So you can kind of predict and figure out, are you drilling? Are you buying more stuff? And so it's really very, very similar to what we're talking about here, except just much more of an instant just chop in half.
The adding into it. Because I feel like the difficulty rate adjustments are your decline curve, right? So you got adjustment upwards every 2 weeks. So that is automatically bringing your production down. At least the revenue you generate from the same amount of production comes down. Then when you throw in the halving, it's just it'd be as if your well decline is normal, and then you have literally some type of mechanical event in your well bore that drops your production to half, and then you continue a decline curve. It sucks. It's a most extreme version of a decline curve in oil and gas. Like the worst situation you can imagine. And it never goes back up.
Nope.
You know what I mean? So it's tough.
Yeah. And so
that's where the hedging comes into place too.
Oh yeah. If you don't hedge, that's something that's really interesting to I'm curious to see how we handle it when we get closer, is to see how hedging works there.
I am too. I'm very curious to see how that works. How do you plan for that?
That's a fantastic question that I would throw over to Matt and to Ben, because I honestly don't know.
Matt and Ben, you guys got to come on. Better be ready. That's a big question we all want to know.
Yeah.
But let me grab this other analogy for oil and gas is firmware is enhanced recovery, right?
Oh, okay. Yeah.
If you want to overclock, oil's at 150 a barrel.
Pump it up, man.
Mm-hmm.
I see.
Yep.
I see.
So are you guys completely replacing the front end software, or is it more just back end tuning?
Oh, it's an overhaul. So you basically end up going into the firmware that boots normally, and you say stop that, and you load your firmware instead.
And this gives you control over your machine. And Paul with Verde Mining said this to me at the Midland meetup, and it stuck with me. All these machines are manufactured in China. They come over here. They have tons of failures. We struggle with it all the time. Send that shit over here. Let us make it better. We put our firmware on it. We can, give you full control over your machine. This isn't some sketchy software that these guys wrote over there and we don't know what's doing. Because we have had these issues in the past with Bitmain and these large name guys having backdoor softwares in their firmware. And maybe I didn't say that right, but yeah, there's a risk there. We take that away by giving you the control over your machine with our firmware.
This is the first firmware that's built in North America. The other aftermarket options are not built here.
Czech Republic or Russia.
Right.
Pick one.
These Bitmain allegedly does that. Right?
No, they got busted. No.
Oh no, Bitmain definitely was doing some sketchy stuff for a while. That was public record.
I'm just saying, this is the paranoid lawyer in me.
Yeah.
That's all it is. Yeah,
don't sue us, Bitmain.
Please. So right now we only support Bitmain machines. All of the oil and gas guys, I'll throw back to Barber. I know y'all had him on. He's hounded me a couple times. So when are we getting What's Miner?
Yeah.
What's the difference? What's the difference?
What's miners
walk
handle
me through
heat
this.
much better
Okay.
than Bitmain.
They're all Chinese though, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
In fact, I think there's a lot of overlap between ultimately the people who.
Okay, let's go through like what are like the top 3 manufacturers of ASICs in the world?
I'll defer to you as the brokerage guy.
So Bitmain
Okay.
is the number one.
Okay.
Right behind them, you have MicroBT, which makes the What's Miner models.
Okay.
Below that, you have Canon, which is much smaller. They've always kind of been the trailing third, but they're really trying to crack into the retail market and Central America. One, because their machines are a lot cheaper, but there's high rates of failure with those. So a little bit of background story and lore of these companies is Bitmain, they've always had the ASIC market cornered. Well, they didn't have much competition in the beginning. There's been tons of small names that have popped up. Many people have tried to manufacture ASICs, even here in the United States. They've all failed because
why are they failing?
Just for manufacturing
Bitmain's
costs?
their silicon is that good.
Oh, okay.
Oh, really?
the silicon comes down to it. The chips where you're sourcing your chips is a big part of it. These guys have a hold on that market, but one of the lead Bitmain engineers actually left Bitmain and started MicroBT, which created the What's Miner machines. So there's always been a bit of rivalry there. Justin alluded to it a little bit. What's Miner machines have known to been more durable in, these against the environment. They held up in the better heat, dust, these types of things. Everybody out in West Texas that I've talked to is a What's Miner Maxi, it can handle the wind and the dust. So that's great. But Bitmain stands out because of their hash rate and their efficiency. They make the most efficient machines on the market. Nobody can. I mean, we're now getting to a point where it's very competitive. Going from in 2017, where the most badass top of the line machine was a S9, its hash rate was 13.5 terahashes per second. Fast forward to today we're seeing water cooled ASICs come out that are 250 terahash per second.
Is that the M53s?
Yeah, the M53s.
Do you know anybody who's ran those yet?
Not personally.
Okay.
I've seen some. I'm
Legend has it they exist.
Yeah, I'm dying to get my hands on some. Man.
I would to talk to somebody who's ran them, because they sound incredible, and I think they're 26 joules.
Yeah, 26 joules per terahash, and they come in a traditional server rack setting.
Right.
So you can take traditional data center equipment, load up your What's Miners in there, have your heat exchanger and your cooling system on the back end of that, and boom, you got several hundred petahash of hashing power in a tiny space. And
that game changer if it's legit. I don't know anybody yet.
You can theoretically decrease your footprint at the same efficiency.
That's another huge thing. So the size of these operations, we don't need big 40-foot containers anymore. No, you can do this in a small server rack is what it looks like.
Yeah.
So you're reducing your footprint there, and these manufacturers have made it very clear. There used to be big talk about, okay, what is the preferred cooling method? So you have 3 types of cooling options on the market right now. One is your traditional airflow. That's using the ambient temperature, the fans on the machine to cool down the hash boards.
Old school Porsche 911 air cooled. Here we go.
Exactly.
Cool.
Next up, you got the hydro cooling. So the manufacturers have put their foot down and really made it clear in the direction that they want to go. And you see that with both Bitmain and MicroBT by releasing all these hydro miners. Both Bitmain and MicroBT have...
It's the actual miners themselves. We're not talking immersion here. We're talking like the miners.
This is miners.
They have little tubes and micro channels that go over each chip.
Yeah,
it's
just like a water-cooled computer, right?
Yeah,
when you build it at home.
It's called indirect cooling.
Cool.
Right. So you just have your cooling plates sat on top of the chips there, indirect. And then, now these guys have made it clear which route they're going. So I think hydro cooling is really, going to take off.
Too.
There's all the immersion head guys are going to hate me for this, but that's
It's a reality, I think.
Yep.
I've heard something to the contrary recently. I've heard someone suggest that basically the hydro cooling is just a cyclic marketing ploy by the miners, basically, because like every time there's a new batch of people getting into Bitcoin mining, like, oh, look at this hydro cooled, but like sustainably, like the amount of leak, like as a mechanical engineer, the amount of leak points on a machine that's got tubes and stuff like that, like I wouldn't touch that with a 10-foot pole. So personally,
first S19s that came out that were hydros, I heard that was the biggest issue, was that people are changing hoses like on a 1 megawatt, they were averaging like 25 a week.
Yeah.
Wow.
Which is ridiculous, right?
That's not serviceable.
No, that's not. But I heard those new M53s. This is going back. This is like a legend. This is all like the legend of the M53 now. Like they are not having nearly the same problems, and the amount of water that they're using is almost like it's very minuscule.
I'd love to see it.
Taking distilled, like going by gallons of water, distilled water at the grocery store, and you can go fill up, a shit ton of these machines, and you're not having to change water hardly.
It's just straight up water. You're not having to put in like radiator fluid.
Water, dude.
There's probably like an antimicrobial or something you have to add to keep from like growth and stuff.
Exactly. It's not like water from your tap. It's
And are these like closed loops individually, or does it all tap into a larger system? Say you're running 1,000 of these things. Like
it taps in.
Like you have one big system that runs all of them.
Like each one would have its own routing, and then there's a system that's probably handling your
cycling,
like filtration of the water and
your heat exchange. Exactly. So those and then you have immersion mining cooling, right? Yeah. These are the three, and that's a direct trip cooling where you actually submerge the entire ASIC in the mineral oil or dielectric fluid is what it really is. Yeah. So it's really interesting to see what's going to happen with these three methods. You talk to the OG guys and they're like, I'm great with air cooling. I don't need this, But when you talk about getting up to these super high efficiencies and high hash rates, like 250 terahash for one machine, you almost have to have these secondary cooling systems to keep up with that heat because it's just so much computing power.
Also, when you look at post-halving, like I said, you have to manage. So if you can capitalize your cooling equipment now to be able to get more hash rate with less expense, now's the time to do it because
I think too, this is kind of off topic, but not really, because I've wondered about this lately. The last bull market we saw, everybody was just trying to grab up new sites, right? You could have established miners, but they want to go grab new sites and build out brand new projects and scale that way. Do you think that going forward, and this would actually kind of tie into like the secondary market for ASICs, that we're going to see more of the groups that are like, look, I've got a great facility here that say I have 50 megawatts of capacity. Now I need to grow, just like, and sorry, I bit my tongue right there, so it sounded weird when I talk, but I need to grow. The best way to grow in the past, at least what they thought, was going and grabbing a new site and expanding that way. I'm kind of wondering if the best use of your capital, because you do have short cycles in mining space, right? They're very short cycles, is to just continue to upgrade your own equipment and take advantage of getting rid of, older equipment during certain time frames and just bringing in newer, higher hashing machines to stay at your existing facility, but increase your hash rate, not trying to increase your megawatts that you have necessarily. Does that make sense?
You're right on there, and we're seeing exactly that.
You are? Okay.
It's called, system upgrades, basically. Mm-hmm. I've had M20s running since 2021, whatever. Mm-hmm. And now these machines just aren't keeping up with the hash rate that I need. So they'll come to us and say, hey, Colin, take these to the secondary market, liquidate them. And the funny thing is, there's a home for every miner, man. Right. It's nuts. M20s may not make sense for us, but you send them down to Central America where power costs are 2 cents kilowatt hour, they make a lot of sense. So we're really seeing this migration of older generation machines heading down to Latin America and, where electricity prices are a little higher here. These guys are selling off their old machines to get the new, biggest, latest model.
I think it's a better use of capital.
Yeah.
I just do. I'm like, if you go buy a new site, you got to put all the money into building the site out, infrastructure side, more personnel. It's like, why don't we just use our growth to increase our hash rate and not just trying to go grab more power?
And if you've already done the work to get that PPA,
right?
If you've already got a relationship with your provider, especially when you look at some of the flare gas stuff. I mean, that's some of the guys in West Texas are already doing that. They had S9s on the shelf because they were just doing a POC on a well. It's like they were giving the gas away. So like, why would I go? So now they're pulling the S9s out and throwing in what's miners. So like, it's absolutely a very fair strategy. I'm curious to see how it plays out because next time Bitcoin rips, people are going to go crazy.
Oh, they're going to go crazy.
Oh,
That's the thing is everybody that I've talked to sometimes are like, oh, this is going to be the last bear market we have. And no, it's not. This is always going to have bear markets. It's a commodity type of product, and the prices go up and down in commodities.
And we're exposed to human nature.
Right.
Greed and fear cycles, my friend.
It's true.
Yeah.
So walk me through, I got one more question. I know we've already gone quite long. On the ASIC side, if somebody's buying, let's just say 1,500 ASICs, that's the example we keep using. Are they buying cash? Are they financing? What are the options here?
So
what are you seeing too? I'm kind of curious, what are the trends?
Luxor, actually, we only take 100% payment up front. In some cases where
is that fiat or Bitcoin or either one?
Fiat, we're an American company, so US wire works best for us. But we do, especially transacting with vendors overseas, you do a lot of the transaction there with USDT, just because it's easier to send and get the deal done. So, but to answer your question, everybody that has been buying ASICs, maybe they have financing on their other side, but by the time they come to us, they have the money ready to go and ready to pull the trigger. So people learned a lot of lessons from taking out ASIC-backed loans last year.
Yeah.
And
I could see how that could go south really, really quickly.
Yeah. And financiers are not as willing to finance equipment now because of that reason. A lot of people got burned. We did a 6,000 unit auction of miners in Norway where it was just that case. They had financed these miners through an investment bank, exposed to variable power rates. Guess what? Power goes up. They can't pay their electricity bill anymore. The bankers want their money back, so they tell them to liquidate the machines. And it's crazy, man. So I don't feel like we're going to see, I know it exists, but I don't think we're going to see a lot of ASIC-backed financing going forward.
Though when you do see financing, that's actually an excellent opportunity to plug the derivatives because like you can see derivatives as part of like an insurance policy. Anyone who is willing to loan you capital for a purchase of ASICs, it would be really easy to imagine, okay, part of the terms, you have to have an insurance policy in the form of hash rate derivative. You have to guarantee that you're going to get income from these machines. Otherwise, we're not going to lend you the money.
I missed the last question, but yeah.
Talking about ASIC-backed financing, how a lot of him got burned, doesn't work.
I could talk about that all day long, too. That's another one that I think is probably one of the areas that needs a biggest overhaul of anything, just because miners have to have money at a cost that is a lot more reasonable. 18% interest on 15% interest on 18-month loans for something that fluctuates in value the way it does.
That's a hard money.
It ain't going to work.
It's not going to work. It's not going to work. And especially when, the groups that have been financing this stuff, they're realizing now that we are completely exposed. And so the loan values that you're going to get based on the collateral you're putting up, it's going to go from, we were talking before, I think 40 to 60% some people were doing. It's going to go down to like 5 to 10% during bull markets. I bet you, because you have to finance it as something that you're not like going to risk basically having collateral that does not even measure up to what you've loaned. Right.
Yep.
And so that's one of the areas that I think is probably there needs to be an overhaul of some sort.
Well, I got a hot take for you before we get out of here. Bitcoin price Q3 over 30K. ASICs are going to be trading above $20 per terahash and up. I'm telling my clients right now, it's the best time. You can get new generation ASICs under $2,000. That's going to be, that's not going to be the case soon. So
I agree. I think this is obviously the best time I think we're going to have to buy hardware.
Now is the time to build.
Now is the time to build.
Yeah.
We've talked about that.
Yeah. On that note, do you guys, is everybody that you guys are talking to, is that people who are already in the game, or do you guys have people who are like, they want exposure to this. Hey, I've got $50 million laying around. I mean, where can I deploy some capital in this space? Or does that not even exist?
No, both. I mean, I was walking around NAPE, and anybody that I talked to that I was in the Bitcoin space, they immediately got very curious. I had one guy straight up tell me, "I'm the money guy. How do I get into this space? Where do I need to invest?"
Old move, Cotton.
So you see what I'm saying though? There are people that are just can't wait to get into this space. They may not know the right investment route for them, but there's options. But to answer your question, I've seen new miners, anybody with available rack space, they're buying up miners as fast as they can right now.
I've got a buddy a week after I started at Luxor. He's like, "Hey, we should get lunch." It's like, "So you're in Bitcoin mining, huh?" It's like, "My boss has some really good PPA," and like, so we're trying to see if we can get him hooked up. So I should get him to Empower though.
You should get him to Empower.
Oh yeah, we haven't even mentioned Empower.
I know this is literally going to go out 2 days before Empower. You can buy tickets at the door, so feel free to show up. You can show up for a day, show up for both days. It's going to be a blast, man. All of us are going to be there. Everybody you've seen on the podcast is going to be there. Yep. Everybody you haven't seen the podcast,
we're going to be running the first ever public live auction at Empower Conference.
You're wearing a bolo tie.
I'm gonna have a bolo tie, a cowboy hat, the gavel, the whole deal.
Do we get like paddles and everything?
Yeah, you're gonna have paddles and everything. So, I heard there's going to be an S19 XP for auction, maybe some other really cool, maybe some What's miners. So,
and then also let's take, this is a charity auction.
Yes.
So where are the proceeds going?
So all the proceeds are going to the Satoshi Action Fund and the Texas Blockchain Council. So
love both of those groups. They're both going to be there. Satoshi's doing a dinner. TBC, we've been partners with for a long time. Love Lee over there and the rest of the team. So
absolutely,
I think it's cool. Kind of giving back to this community.
Lee and Steve got a cool thing going on. I'll let them. We got to have them on here.
Yeah,
they just took me out to Riot.
Oh, did they?
Yeah. I got to go out there with a bunch of Texas legislators and tour Riot. We got some brisket and mac and cheese. Gideon was there. We were hanging out. It was incredible.
I saw that picture actually. Though.
Yeah. So we were out there spreading the Bitcoin gospel to the legislature. They loved it. They loved everything about it. So
that's awesome.
It's very Texas. Yeah.
We're good. We're good here.
That's right.
I'm glad to be in Texas.
Texas forever.
Absolutely.
Well, guys, thank you for coming on.
Absolutely.
Really appreciate it.
It's been a blast.
Looking forward to next week. Definitely looking forward to the auction, man.
I'll be up there.
It's going to be a good time.
Can you speak that quickly? I'm curious.
$1 per terahash, $2 per terahash, $3 per terahash sold.
What more do you need, man?
Yeah, let's go, man. I'm ready.
Well, good. Well, thank you guys. You got anything else you want to?
I try to convince them to wear like a Dumb and Dumber version, like their suits is blue and orange suits, but like cowboy, like rhinestone cowboy.
We'll see.
We'll see.
Come on, you guys got a week to get
I was
figured
thinking
out.
more like Johnny Cash, all black kind of look, but
La Flama Blanca.
Yeah,
there you go.
We got a big contingent coming too. We've got Nick, our CEO, Ethan, our COO, Aaron, my boss, director. Yeah, he's already on here, director of business development. So
y'all coming out full force.
Wait, we got him a promotion to vice president of business development. I thought we tried to in the last. Did we had him on?
Yeah, maybe he needs another promotion.
Yeah, wouldn't it?
I like it.
Ethan.
Keep hyping us up, man.
Yeah. Everybody needs to be a VP, like a bank.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Let's do that.
I like it.
Well, thanks, guys. This was fun.
Yeah, I had a great time. Thank you for having us.
I learned a lot.
I did.
That's a good thing.
That was actually very, very educational.
We'll get the derivatives guys on soon.
We'll
learn more about that.
We're down to come nerd out anytime.
We definitely need to get that one because that's such a big one for
it's huge.
The industry, like the outsider, the oil and gas industry folks. If you can get them comfortable on that end, there's gonna be a lot more of them.
I may actually pull Chuck into that podcast. We may have to strap on a few more mics.
Yeah,
we need some finance.
There you go.
Wisdom to kind of come to the table to help.
Why have we not had Chuck on here? He could give a good perspective.
I think he's asleep on the couch right now out there.
Is he?
Probably.
Let's go wake him
up.
up.
We could do episode 2 in one day. We do like a marathon.
We could. We got a marathon on the 7th, marathon on the 10th.
We do. We got a bunch of. We're gonna do a lot of shows during.
A lot of shows.
So we need to actually sit down and probably schedule those out.
Some photobomb opportunities.
Right.
Just jumping in the background.
Tons of them. So
if you guys like the show, we've never really asked for ratings or reviews. We've gotten like 1, I think, and it was 5 stars. So let's keep that trend going.
Oh, we have like 4 now.
But by the way, I looked at download numbers. Been podcasting 6 years, like I said. everybody in this space listens to the show.
I
So-
have a client who flew in from Australia yesterday. He told me he downloaded every episode.
Hell yeah.
Said it was best. This is the best Bitcoin podcast he's listened to.
Let's go. Love
Every
it.
time I
Beautiful.
listen,
I think he's right.
I've listened to every episode, and like I think I've met just about every single person you've had on here. And when I look at it, I'm like, I've met that guy. I'll get to it. I'll get to it later in the week, and then I'll listen to it. I'm like, oh my god, that's so good. Like,
Thank you.
the depth that you get to with the conversation here, it's just fantastic. It's really good.
That is a very nice compliment.
There's
That
a
is
review,
a
Jake.
compliment. What?
That
There's
was your
a review.
review.
Yeah.
That's a review right
Can
there.
you please
I'm just
go
gonna
to-
take that as a micro clip, and we're just gonna share that.
Yeah.
I did
Everybody
see
should
one
go listen
review.
to it.
I think it was on iTunes, or like whatever the podcast thing is for Apple, and it was like really great review, and it was like it followed up. I am not either one of their mothers. So I was like, oh, great.
That's probably Lisa.
Yeah, it probably was Lisa.
Yeah, definitely.
She's so nice.
She's awesome. She's
the
awesome.
best.
I enjoyed her episode, but well, yeah, thank you
Yep.
guys.
Absolutely.
Appreciate it.
See you out in
Thanks, guys.
power.
Let's
See you
do it.
there.